Dragon Riders, Kaze no Kaeru, by Night Dragon Zero. Chris's perspective. Days passed. There was no effective way for me to keep track of time, so I gave it my best estimate. Each day, I was dragged out for several battles in the arena against all sorts of Pokemon. Having no choice, I fought, and yet defeated each one. Sometimes there were even multiple opponents. I sustained more injuries and bruises than I could remember in that short period, but otherwise remained alive, and more importantly, battle-capable. They must have thought I was some kind of prodigy throwing me in like this. At first, I tried to meld my martial arts moves to fit my new body, somewhat like I trained Night Slice. It had been successful at first, but then my wild instincts began to take hold every time I went into battle mode. It was slowly at first, being only for a short time. However, I began to lose myself the moment I stepped into the ring, only to find myself battered, bruised, and back in my cell. My resistance had apparently rubbed off on my other masters too. I was hardly fed at all, making my Scyther instincts flare up more often, worse and much stronger. Even when I did decide to obey, I was still whipped and starved. Everything escalated until that day. I hadn't eaten in quite a while and was extra grouchy. Still, they forced me into the training arena and sent a Quilava against me. That one didn't take much more than a couple of dodges and a slash to take out. But then came another and another. After taking on 5 Quilavas in a row, my agility had been seriously overused, as if I'd been dashing about wildly trying to evade the flames. My claws were stained with blood. I was dead tired. "Come over here, Sorja," my master ordered, standing in the doorway. I refused to move from my kneeling position in the middle of the ring. The Quilavas had already been recalled by their owners. However, they had never used a Pokeball on me, saying I didn't deserve the privilege of having one. I snarled as my master approached. "Get up, and don't start this now, or you won't get fed again." He got out his whip and lashed at me. Frustrated, I snatched at it, knocking it back against his face. "Ow!" It had left a long cut against his cheek. "Damn thing! You asked for it!" He brought out the control device and activated the electric collar, sending the shocks up my body. I was screaming in anguish as he recovered his whip and started lashing at me again. My face hit the ground, but I turned to the side and looked up at my tormentor. He just kept on hitting me, and I soon lost the strength to cry out. However, I noticed the room was completely empty except for the two of us. I smelled blood. My own, but also his, which was dripping from the wound I'd given him along his face. Blood. Fresh blood. And flesh. He's alone, my opponent. The moment that hit my mind, my instincts flared up. With renewed strength, I scrambled to my knees and caught the whip in my jaws, pulling forward. The startled Rocket Commander failed to release his grip and came stumbling forward right into the path of my slash attack. "Yeah!" he screamed, clutching his bleeding face. I was in pain, both from my wounds and from the electric shocks of the collar. The pain transformed me into a sense of strength, and then fury, rage, vengeance. With a roar, I fell upon my tormentor. The man was slammed onto his back. For the first time, I saw him sincerely panicked. It gave me great sense of gleefulness seeing that. There were other screams from outside as the doors were slammed shut. The panicked rockets outside had condemned their comrade to his fate. My tormentor managed to pull a pistol out, but never got the chance to fire. I sliced his hand off. He screamed as I jabbed a claw into his chest. It was exhilarating, my prey screaming, squirming, knowing that death was near. His blood was pouring out like a fountain. Warm, glorious blood. Fresh blood. I struck again and again with my claws. Then I clasped my jaws around his neck. He was struggling and screaming all the way up to the moment that I twisted and snapped his neck. Blood! The kill! I roared, having made my kill. Now, the flesh. My head lowered. Somewhere in all of this, my human mind was screaming too. There was no way I could have described the emotions that came over me. At any other time, I would have fought my instincts. I would have resisted and tried to keep my human side. This time, I couldn't. The hunger was too great. The meat in front of me, my kill, too tempting. I gave in and bit down, ripping the flesh and swallowing it, gulping down greedily on the human flesh. At the horrific moment, I realized I had consciously done it. I had wanted to do it as much as my Scyther instincts commanded me to. I had lost whatever little I had left of my humanity. Firestorm's perspective. "Storm, are you all right?" Ogwell asked, walking over to me. I nodded, still leaning against the railing. The ship seemed to be crawling along the waves that I was looking out upon. A lot had gone on emotionally for me in the past few days. Jade, as a Charizard, had been seconds away from eating me alive when Dracia had interfered, causing him to fly off on instinct. He thought he was a wild Charizard now, and he had fled to find some place he considered safe. And that could be nearly anywhere. The hardest part was going back to find Jade's uncle, Blaine. I promised the old man that I'd look after his nephew, and I'd failed. I had expected to get a long scolding, but all he told me to do was go back on there and keep trying. Failure only comes when you refuse to keep trying. I was sure Chris had said that too. I'd just forgotten. None of the other Pokemon had any argument with Blaine's words. Unfortunately, only Mirage and Dracia were in a condition to come along with Agwo, Serac, and myself. Urgez and Wartortle hadn't fully recovered, and Magmar was staying behind to help watch things on the island. I repacked Chris's and Jade's equipment and brought along what I deemed necessary: laptop, clothes, and survival equipment. I also brought with me the small box of Chris's gym badges that we'd won together. Blaine added in his Volcano badge, making the complete set of 8. He'd said that it was the incentive for getting our group back together and going out to complete the Indigo League, now slightly more than 4 months away. After giving each of us our farewells, our group had to split up. My party was now on a ferry bound for Olivine City. I was working on a pure hunch that I'd heard Jade say he was going west right at the moment he'd let go of me and flown off. As Zion had told me, I had this psychic potential. Zion, I thought. Perhaps if I could contact him somehow. I'm going inside for a bit, I told Agwo. All right, he acknowledged. I hurried through the corridors of the ship back to my room. My planeswalking sacred technique was not something I was yet skilled at using, but I figured I could use it to try and get in touch with Zion. However, as I opened the door, suddenly I got a bad feeling that something wasn't right. Right on cue, I heard a click as a gun was jabbed against my back. Be quiet, a male voice commanded. Go inside, quickly. I did as I was told and heard the man closing and locking the door behind me. What do you want? I demanded. You may consider me a friend. You're in great danger now. You already have many enemies, but now you count Silph as one of them. Silph? Haven't you thought about how suspicious they've been lately? And about the previous president's death? It was a setup, the former vice president, now the current president, in charge all along. On the outside, they're a Pokemon technology company. On the inside, they're dirty scumbags, corrupted to the core. What does this have to do with me? Silph's special forces have been reformed since their Cinnabar special forces were destroyed some months back, put down by one of their own. Although now, without their chimera technology, they're just a standard group of soldiers. Wait, tell me, what's a chimera? I asked. The Chimera Project was an experiment started years ago to blend human and Pokemon DNA. Both Team Rocket and Silph were rivals in this. As with all experiments like this, there were complications with the subjects, though I won't go into that direction. I didn't have anything to do with that, so why come after me? You're fortunate that Silph hasn't been able to track your group since the incident in their HQ in Saffron City. However, it then brings us to those that they have found their secret war with, Team Rocket. Damn, I cursed. Apparently, a couple of their agents reported you being able to use flame attacks against them. Aaron and Scarlet, after Jade's little encounter with them, I recalled. Now they believe you to be one of the chimeras, he continued. They must think that I'm Jade, I realized. I'll have to let them believe it for now. I did look a lot like him, with the exception of the hair color. Still, humans could change that just as easily as they could change clothes. And if our DNA got mixed around as Jade had suspected, it was no wonder my human form appeared similar to him. So, they're after me because they think I'm one of their experimental subjects? I queried. Not exactly. They don't know anything about you, and believe you to be one of their rivals, Silph. That's why Team Rocket agents are on this boat too, but so are Silph's FFs. Let me guess, it's because the Special Forces managed to steal information from Team Rocket, and they thought they were onto me. I sighed. This was getting to be one heck of a complication. Indeed, seems like you're a marked man. And where do you stand? Nowhere and yet everywhere. You'll understand this in time. For now, take these. An MP5, several clips, and a gas mask were tossed in front of me. And what are these for? I asked. I suddenly realized that the gun was no longer at my back. I spun round only to find nobody there. The room was completely empty. The next instant, I found myself dropping to the ground as a couple of round objects shattered the windows. Gas grenades! I pulled on the gas mask, deciding to trust the mysterious man's advice. Grabbing the MP5, I found it fully loaded. Stuffing the clips into my pocket, I ducked around the corner and waited. I could hear voices shouting from outside. They were coming. I knelt down and took aim.